You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Is there anybody out there?
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator.
Chalice 21 is now. I have the unknown on my radar.
It was 1981 when Gaddafi laid claim to a big chunk of the Gulf of Sidra, and American F-14s ended up having to shoot down 2 Libyan fighter jets in self-defense. 5 years later, our 6th Fleet sailed over the imaginary line in that same Gulf of Sidra that Gaddafi called the Line of Death, and when challenged, our Navy ended up sinking 2 of their ships. A month later, President Reagan ordered powerful airstrikes against Libya just days after a bomb blast at La Belle nightclub in Berlin. That killed 2 American servicemen and a Turkish woman, also injuring 229 others, including 79 Americans. Reagan said at the time that we had irrefutable evidence Libya was behind the bombing, and he also said this:
"When our citizens are abused or attacked anywhere in the world on the direct orders of a hostile regime, we will respond so long as I'm in this Oval Office. Self-defense is not only our right, it is our duty."
Seems to be a slight change in the U.S. naval policy in the Persian Gulf. Good evening, I'm Gary Jackson, sitting in for the vacationing Howard Nathan. The seas were calm today in the Persian Gulf, but Iranian warships are becoming a more common sight as U.S. and European allies operate in this dangerous area. The Navy started its Persian Gulf operation guarding ships sailing the U.S. flag, but now a slight shift is becoming clear in U.S. naval operations. As Anthony Mason reports, this new strategy has some Middle East experts worried.
The New Year's first victim in the Gulf tanker war anchored today for repairs. Friday, a missile ripped a hole through the hull of the Maltese ship Alga. Every day, Iranian warships now patrol the Gulf waters, challenging even the Western Armada.
British warship. Oh, this is Iranian warship calling you on channel 16. You are in formation with 2 tankers?
This is British warship. I'm on passage in international waters, over.
This week, Defense Secretary Frank Carlucci will visit the American fleet and meet with the leaders of 4 moderate Gulf states. Saudi Arabia's King Fahd is expected to pressure the U.S. to increase its role in the region. The Reagan administration's policy is to escort only U.S.-flagged ships, but the Navy seems to be quietly stretching those boundaries, increasing what one foreign diplomat called the opportunity for an accident.
So now the Stark. Now there's a ship with a history.
Yes.
A unique history.
Very unique, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened? It was obviously before you got on board her, but
that was
her history is dynamic.
Yeah, that incident happened with the 2 Exocet missiles that Iraq shot at them. Happened just as I was enlisting, and one of my friends on board the Vreeland was actually on the ship when it happened, and.
The guided missile cruiser Sterret was spotted yesterday sailing alongside 2 tankers flying foreign flags, one Japanese, the other Liberian. A U.S. decision to play Gulf policeman could be expensive. Nevertheless, the moderate Gulf states are uncertain of the American commitment and fear that another Stark incident might provoke the U.S. to pull out entirely. With the escalating pace of the war, that seems unlikely. Concluded one Western diplomat, we're going to be here for a very long time. Anthony Mason, CBS News in the Gulf.
Since the Karg Island oil terminal had come under repeated Iraqi attack since early in the war, Iran had switched much of its production to the offshore rigs at Sassan and Siri. On the 18th of April, the frigate USS Samuel B. Roberts issued a warning to the crews of both platforms that they were going to be destroyed. After the Iranians evacuated the platforms, sailors from the Roberts boarded them and discovered large numbers of anti-aircraft guns and missiles. The platforms were then destroyed by gunfire, while aircraft from the carrier Enterprise prevented any interference. Empty shell cases could be seen bobbing in the water.
In 1988, the USS Vincennes mistakenly shoots down an Iranian jetliner over the Persian Gulf. All 290 people aboard are killed. The United States later agrees to pay nearly $62 million in compensation.
The Milan anti-tank missile. We've got 300 in the field. Yeah. Yep. Let's kill some Russians.
Voting to pump up the money for the freedom fighters is the only way for the Northeastern liberal to prove that he's serious.
How much are you asking for?
I'd want to go from 70 million to 100 million. If you vote for me, I can deliver the Black Caucus for the farm subsidy.
взламыватель?
Ну, в общем-то, она мне и говорит, что она не уверена, что я человек серьезный.
Совершенно больше.
Заряжай уже. Боевая готовность. Прием. Я включил. Прием. Прием. Открыть огонь. И вообще, что такое серьезное отношение? Что она под этим понимать, а?
Ваш!
Это на что, о верности, что ли? Ха! Ай, ну если ее понятие верности...
I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species from another planet outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization.
hugs the ground at nearly 500 miles an hour. From over 1,500 miles away, it can hit a target within 10 yards. It can seek out and destroy the enemy without a pilot. The missile is a crushing weapon of choice for today's battlefield.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
I think you should listen to this.
This better not be another damn Russian spy job.
Boys from air traffic res say the skies are clear.
It's the real thing. A radio signal from another world.
Mr. President, our intelligence tells us the object has settled into a stationary orbit. Part of it is broken off into nearly 36 other pieces, smaller than the whole, sir. Yet over 15 miles in width themselves.
Where are they heading?
They should be entering our atmosphere within the next 25 minutes.
Earthquake? Let's just get there as quickly as possible.
What's the rush, huh? Think we'll get to Washington and won't be there?
It is confirmed. The unexplained phenomenon is headed for Moscow.
It's like a chess. First, they're positioning their pieces using this one signal to synchronize their efforts. And then what? Checkmate.
God.
I really don't think they flew 90 billion light years to start a fight.
Oh, God, I hope they bring back Elvis.
There's gonna be a lot of frightened people out there.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
Something you want to add to this briefing, Captain Hiller?
No, sir. Just a little anxious to get up there and whoop E.T.'s ass, that's all.
I think maybe I'd answer it this way. I keep, in my frustration sometimes, you know, actually, if you count some of the things going on in smaller countries and all, there have been about 114 wars since World War II. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? Wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all? We were all human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat? Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization.
Stay with us now for Saddam Hussein, Defying the World.
The forces of President Saddam Hussein in action in Kuwait City, capital of the tiny but rich neighbor Iraq had long yearned to conquer. The takeover, so clearly threatened, still caught civilians by surprise. Iraq's troops, though far outnumbering the Kuwaitis, didn't find things that easy. From a hotel room, an amateur cameraman filmed a Kuwaiti armored car fighting back. Smoke billows from the barracks of the elite Kuwaiti Royal Guard, the center of resistance, as they fought fiercely to protect the emir's palace. Kuwaitis fought bravely but were seriously outgunned. The arrival of Iraqi helicopter gunships signaled the inevitable climax. The appearance of the airborne forces aboard Soviet-made craft meant the end of the brief but bloody struggle by Kuwaitis to keep their independence, to deny Saddam Hussein his dream of domination. At least one of the helicopters had been brought down, the fate of its crew uncertain. Iraq didn't release any casualty figures for its own side, but it's now clear that for Kuwait, such a small country, the human price had been very high. As the clearing up began, it was reported that several hundred Kuwaitis had died. For the rest, and many foreign nationals, the future seemed extremely unclear, even dangerous. The world may condemn, but Saddam Hussein is not just a popular leader. He's a man fanatically revered by the vast majority of Iraq's 18 million people. And these crowds revere a man who believes he is the one person able to unite them with other nations in a huge pan-Arab state, a leader who portrays himself as the reincarnation of King Nebuchadnezzar, who ruled from Babylon in biblical times. As in so many totalitarian states, the leader's presence is felt and celebrated everywhere. His full name is Saddam Hussein al-Takriti, after the small town of Tikrit where he comes from, where he first joined the youth wing of the ruling Ba'athist party. There are many stories of the young fanatic who literally fought his way up the party machine, personally murdering as he established his credentials for command in what's always been a violent society. For all his military uniforms and titles, Saddam Hussein has never served in Iraq's armed forces and never had military training. Yet it's the army, as much as his secret police, who keep him in power. An army regularly purged of any officers who step out of line. An army trusted no further than the political commissars attached to every unit. The army is huge, 1 million men under arms, 3/4 of them combat ready. Not only has it more soldiers than any other army in the Middle East, it's the 4th largest in the world and growing. It's well equipped with missiles. Iraq has 70 batteries of anti-aircraft rockets. When it comes to tanks, Iraq now has 5,000, dwarfing the armory of most of its neighbors, many supplied by the likes of America and Britain. Long-range missiles, the sort of menacing weapons fired off at Iranian cities in great numbers during the Gulf War. And Iraqi troops show every sign of being ready to cope with chemical warfare. A vast, frightening military machine. But for all its apparent power, Western analysts do not rate it very efficient. It did not fare very well in the war with Iran. Savage, costly, and largely futile.
Baghdad, 1991. The Tomahawk has its baptism of fire. Wave after wave of cruise missiles hit their targets.
Yes, the latest Tomahawk cruise missile to fly just over our position here.
Operation Desert Storm catapulted the Tomahawk onto the world stage. A smart flying bomb that struck with awesome precision. The modern Tomahawk is 1,000 times more accurate. First, it takes a photo of the target area and compares it to a digital photo in its computer memory. Then a GPS signal guides the missile into the target. Once locked on, a Tomahawk hits within an accuracy of 10 yards. Some say it could even fly through a window.
Certain that we stand at a defining hour. Halfway around the world, we are engaged in a great struggle in the skies and on the seas and sands. We know why we're there. We are Americans, part of something larger than ourselves. For 2 centuries, we've done the hard work of freedom, and tonight we lead the world in facing down a threat to decency and humanity. What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
No, I'm trying to tell you I don't know.
Oh.
But if we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised. I just hope that it's not like Independence Day.
Yeah, right.
Movie, that it's a conflict.
Well, now we have friendly
Maybe the
aliens.
only way to unite this incredibly divided world of ours. They're out there. We better think of how all the differences among people on Earth would seem small if we felt threatened by a space invader. That's the whole theory of independence.
You're right. You're right.
Everybody gets together and makes
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united in our common interest. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July, and you will once again be fighting for our freedom. Not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.
And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us, we can bring about that realization.
We begin with the story of a shadowy multimillionaire who has declared a holy war against the United States. To some in the Islamic world, he is a hero. To the United States government, though, he is a terrorist, a real threat to the lives of U.S. troops. He is Osama bin Laden, and Impact's Peter Arnett takes us into his hideaway and into his mind with this first ever television interview.
Amidst these remote mountains of Afghanistan are the various hiding places of one of the world's most wanted men, Osama bin Laden.
We declared a jihad, a holy war, against the United States government because it is unjust, criminal, and tyrannical.
The U.S. State Department calls him one of the most significant financial sponsors of Islamic extremism in the world.
He is a major terrorist financier, and with a large fortune of his own, he has bankrolled terrorist groups and individuals all over the world.
The State Department links the 41-year-old bin Laden to Ramzi Youssef, alleged mastermind of the World Trade Center bombing, New York. An attempted bombing of U.S. troops in 1992, Yemen. Terrorist training camps in Sudan and Afghanistan. Islamic terrorist groups in Egypt and Algeria.
Younger generation, Islamic, especially those Islamic fundamentalists, they are looking for a hero. And Mr. bin Laden fit the bill.
In Western intelligence circles, bin Laden is best known for this document, a call for jihad or holy war against the thousands of U.S. soldiers now stationed in Saudi Arabia. That call to jihad came after 2 bombings of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. The first in Riyadh in 1995, 7 dead. The second in Dhahran in 1996, 19 dead, hundreds injured. To support his holy war, sources estimate bin Laden has up to $500 million. To execute the jihad, bin Laden has thousands of committed followers inside Saudi Arabia.
They are either direct followers taking direct command and order from bin Laden, or they are small cells and groups who believe bin Laden is a godfather. His message is almost like a religious order.
Most of those followers fought alongside bin Laden in an earlier jihad, the 1980s war in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. Afghanistan drew thousands of volunteers like these from around the Islamic world. They learned how to handle weapons and explosives. They became known as the Afghan Arabs. Osama bin Laden left his comfortable life in Saudi Arabia to become a leader of the Afghan Arabs. Informed estimates put their numbers between 12,000 and 20,000 men. Bin Laden's victories against the Soviets were well publicized in Saudi Arabia.
because of that, a lot of people wanted to participate in jihad, and they thought that Osama is an important figure. But he was not only willing to put his money, but he actually gone there himself and fought himself and get hurt.
After the Afghan war, bin Laden became disillusioned with the Saudi regime, deeming it insufficiently Islamic. He moved to Sudan. 5 years later, under U.S. and Saudi pressure, bin Laden was expelled from Sudan. A year ago, bin Laden took refuge here in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is perhaps the only country in the world that will accept him. Our quest to meet bin Laden begins in Peshawar, Pakistan, and then across the Khyber Pass to Jalalabad, Afghanistan, where we wait for several days. Finally, bin Laden's media advisor arrives. We are allowed to take our lights and sound equipment, but not our camera. There have been assassination attempts against bin Laden, and his security force worries our camera might contain a tracking device that would give away his location. The interview will be conducted with their camera. As best as we can reconstruct it, this is the route that we took to meet bin Laden. We are put in a minivan with curtained windows and drive west. As night falls, we move to a four-wheel drive vehicle that makes its way up a rough mountain path past checkpoints manned by heavily armed men. We are searched and electronically scanned to ensure that we're not carrying a tracking device. About 5,000 feet up is a small hut. We are allowed about an hour and a half with bin Laden. We have submitted questions in advance. He agrees to answer most of them, but does not allow follow-up questions.
Mr. bin Laden, you have declared a jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
The U.S. government has committed acts that are extremely unjust, hideous, and criminal through its support of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And we believe the U.S. is directly responsible for those killed in Palestine, Lebanon, and Iraq. Due to its subordination to the Jews, the arrogance of the United States regime has reached the point that they occupied Arabia, the holiest place of the Muslims, who are more than 1 billion people in the world today. For this and other acts of aggression and injustice, we have declared jihad against the U.S.
Is the jihad directed against the U.S. government or United States troops in Arabia? What about U.S. civilians in Arabia or the people of the United States?
We have focused our declaration of jihad on striking at the U.S. soldiers inside Arabia, the country of the two holy places, Mecca and Medina. In our religion, it is not permissible for any non-Muslim to stay in Arabia. Therefore, even though American civilians are not targeted in our plan, they must leave. We do not guarantee their safety.
When this guy delivers his statements attacking the U.S. presence or his call for jihad, he is justifying these actions in very explicit Quranic, Islamic terms with a law. It's like a careful legal brief.
The U.S. government charges bin Laden with supporting terrorist activities throughout the Middle East.
The U.S. today has set a double standard, calling whoever goes against its injustice a terrorist. It wants to occupy our countries, steal our resources, impose agents on us to rule us, and then wants us to agree to all this. If we refuse to do so, it says we are terrorists. When Palestinian children throw stones against the Israeli occupation, the U.S. says they are terrorists. Whereas when Israel bombed the United Nations building in Lebanon, while it was full of children and women, the U.S. stopped any plan to condemn Israel.
The U.S. government also points to bin Laden's circumstantial ties to terrorism within the United States.
Mr. bin Laden, if you had an opportunity to give a message to President Clinton, what would that message be?
Mentioning the name of Clinton provokes disgust and revulsion. The president has a heart that knows no words, A heart that kills hundreds of children definitely knows no words. Our people in Arabia will send him messages without words, because he does not understand words. If there is a message that I may send through you, I address the mothers of the American troops. To these mothers I say, if they are concerned for their sons, then let them object to the U.S. government's policy.
But in Afghanistan, bin Laden is beyond the reach of U.S. law enforcement. The country is dominated by the Taliban, a movement of religious students turned warriors who have imposed their harsh interpretation of Islam. The Taliban have recently declared that bin Laden is their guest, providing he does not attack other nations. But bin Laden may have other ideas.
What are your future plans?
You'll see them and hear about them in the media, God willing.
I heard he'd been working for the government.
While we were speaking moments ago, a second plane, hard to identify the size of it, bored its way into the easternmost tower. So we have...
Just a matter of time, I suppose.
Two crashes. Here's a different angle of the same plane. You see it off there on the left. Boring into there. But again, at this point, it is restricted airspace. It is a clear day, so the suspicions are high that these are intentional acts. But the FBI at this point is still trying to confirm that these are intentional acts. We have another eyewitness on the phone.
Base of the World Trade Center. You can see the two towers. Debris continues to fall and to rain on the people below. There are people hanging from the windows 90 stories up, and a number of bodies have actually hit the pavement.
The world will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."
This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the two towers. Debris continues to fall and to rain on the people below. There are people hanging from the windows 90 stories up, and a number of bodies have actually hit the pavement.
I think that there's some really crazy people in this world. This is just not too many innocent people. People were jumping off the building, body parts all over the place. I mean, this is just, I feel like I was in a movie.
With 9 counts of Penal Code Section 187, murder.
With each passing minute, the story darkens.
Regarding the belief that maybe there was a cult involved or a sect.
Descending past the strange.
Was he a vampire?
In terms of the caskets, we don't know what the intent was.
Into
He wills. We have confidence because freedom is the permanent hope of mankind, the hunger in dark places, the longing of the soul. When our founders declared a new order of the ages, when soldiers died in wave upon wave for a union based on liberty, when citizens marched in peaceful outrage under the banner Freedom Now, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled. History has an ebb and flow of justice, But history also has a visible direction set by liberty and the author of liberty. When the Declaration of Independence was first read in public and the Liberty Bell was sounded in celebration, a witness said it rang as if it meant something. In our time, it means something still. America in this young century proclaims liberty throughout all the world and to all the inhabitants thereof. Renewed in our strength, tested but not weary, we are ready for the greatest achievements in the history of freedom. May God bless you, and may He watch over the United States of America.
That there's going to be a nuclear war.
Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us, we can bring about that realization.
The White House is backing remarks by Secretary of State George Shultz that terrorism should be fought with military force. Shultz says the public should support such action, even if it endangers innocent lives. CNN's Ralph Begleiter reports from the State Department.
The Secretary of State stayed out of public view following his landmark comments on preemptive military action against terrorism, but a controversy swirled around him for saying that Americans must understand that using military force to combat terrorism has the potential for loss of life of some of our fighting men and some innocent people. In Cincinnati, Vice President Bush disavowed Shultz's policy on terrorism. "I don't agree with that," said Bush. "We're not going to go out and bomb innocent civilians. I don't think we will ever get to the point where we will kill 100 innocent women and children just to get one terrorist." Aides traveling with the president said Bush may not have known exactly what Shultz said. Mr. Reagan said he would find out if there's any disagreement between his vice president and Secretary of State. But the president made it clear he does not disagree with Shultz.
There was nothing new in that speech that was not already part of it.
Pentagon officials have been wary of using military force against suspected terrorists, fearing that could fan the fires of anti-American sentiment among other terrorists.
Given the recognition that terrorism is in fact a kind of warfare, and therefore it may have to be responded to with a warlike action or military action, there is the possibility that civilians who may be innocent might be involved.
For the Reagan administration, the debate over how to respond to terrorism comes at a delicate time. There is clearly a desire to warn terrorists who might be thinking of pulling another attack before the U.S. election. But there is also evidence that Secretary of State Shultz has become frustrated with government's inability to act quickly, decisively, and without political debate at home to militarily teach terrorists a lesson. Ralph Begleiter, CNN at the State Department.
Is there anybody out there?
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster? Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
I was particularly concerned, Mr. Chairman, because I read in Miami papers and several others that there had been a plan developed by that same agency, a contingency plan in the event of emergency that would suspend the American Constitution. And I was deeply concerned about it and wondered if that was the area in which he had worked. I believe that it was,
May I most respectfully request that that matter not be touched upon at this stage. If we wish to get into this, I'm certain arrangements can be made for an executive session.
We have lived as if in a trance. We have lived as people in fear. And now, our rights and our freedoms in peril, we slowly awaken to learn that we have been afraid of the wrong thing.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
I'm not too sure what he thought he was swearing to when he took the oath of office to uphold the Constitution and our laws.
You can roughly locate any community in the world, somewhere along a scale running all the way from democracy to despotism.
A government more dangerous to our liberty than is the enemy it claims to protect us from.
Avoid the comfortable idea that the mere form of government can of itself safeguard a nation against despotism.
The Military Commissions Act of 2006.
And what I read here is pretty chilling.
And if you somehow think habeas corpus has not been suspended for American citizens, but only for everybody else, ask yourself this. If you are pulled off the street tomorrow and they call you an alien or an undocumented immigrant or an unlawful enemy combatant, exactly how are you going to convince them to give you a court hearing to prove you are not?
The bigger this war gets, the more freedoms we lose. It's time to stop submitting to this tyranny. It's time to realize that we're being enslaved. Uh-oh, it's our tax dollars at work. Protect us from ourselves. Hey, guys, I used to be one of you. Stop selling out your own species.
The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion the public safety may require it. We have handed a blank check drawn against our own freedom to a man who may now, if he so decides, declare not merely any non-American citizens unlawful enemy combatants and ship them somewhere, anywhere, but may now, if he so decides, declare you an unlawful enemy combatant and ship you somewhere, anywhere.
What I say goes, see? I'm the law around here.
So I hear the voices, and I read the front page, and I know the speculation, but I'm the decider, and I decide what is best.
First of all, this president's theory of his power is now, I think, so extreme that it's unprecedented. He believes that he has the inherent authority to violate federal law.
To move beyond that, it's the American people themselves that have to make a consensus that they do not trust Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney with the reins of power, given their very, very extravagant claims of what the president can do after 9/11. For example, utilize the idea that all of the United States is a military battlefield and they could impose martial law anytime they wish.
Attention, attention, attention. American forces are here to help. Remain calm. We will not tolerate civil disobedience. Attention, attention, attention. American forces are here to help.
Come on, you Let's go! Let's go! People are dying inside! One more.
Law ever become a reality in America? Some fear any nuclear, biological, or chemical attack on U.S. territory might trigger just that. And as KSLA News 12's Jeff Farrell discovered, the clergy would help the government with potentially their biggest problem, us.
From my cold, dead hands.
Charlton Heston's famous declaration captures a truly American value, the overarching desire to protect our freedoms. But gun confiscation is exactly what happened during the state of emergency following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. U.S. troops also arrived, something far easier to do even now thanks to last year's elimination of the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act. That forbid U.S. troops from policing on American soil. If martial law were enacted here at home, like depicted in the movie The Siege, Easing public fears and quelling dissent would be critical. And that's exactly what the Clergy Response Team, as it's called, helped accomplish in New Orleans.
Jeff, the primary thing that we say to anybody is let's cooperate and get this thing over with, and then we'll settle the differences once the crisis is over.
Such clergy response teams would walk a tightrope between the needs of the government versus the wishes of the public.
In a lot of cases, these clergy would already be known in the neighborhoods in which they're helping to defuse that situation.
For the clergy, one of the biggest tools that they will have in helping calm the public down or obey the law is the Bible itself, specifically Romans 13.
Because the government is established by the Lord, you know, and that's what we believe in the Christian faith. That's what's stated in the Scripture.
Civil rights advocates believe the amount of public cooperation may depend largely on how long they expect a suspension of their rights might last. Jeff Farrell, KSLA News 12 report.
You feel America is going to be under some martial law pressure as soon as we get attacked again? Is that correct?
The Homeland Security Committee in Congress, with the highest level security clearances, are not allowed to see the details of PDD 51 signed May 9th of this year that literally makes the president a dictator. And last year, the president funded the John Warner Defense Authorization Act for domestic oppression of the American people. It actually says that it is for domestic insurrection and rebellion. This has nothing to do with terror. This is the military-industrial complex waging war on the people.
These changes pose a threat to the survival of our republic by giving the president the power to declare martial law for as little reason as to restore public order. The 1807 Act severely restricted the president in his use of the military within the United States borders, and the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 strengthened these restrictions with strict oversight by Congress. The new law allows the president to circumvent the restrictions of both laws. The Insurrection Act has now become the, quote, Enforcement of the Laws to Restore Public Order Act, close quote. This is hardly a title that suggests that the authors cared about or understood the nature of a constitutional republic. Before the war in the Middle East spreads and becomes a world conflict for which we'll be held responsible, or the liberties of all Americans become so suppressed we can no longer resist, much has to be done. Time is short, but our course of action should be clear. Each of us must choose which course of action we should take. Education, conventional political action, or even peaceful civil disobedience to bring about necessary changes. But let it not be said that we did nothing.
His claim that he can identify any American citizen as an enemy combatant, detain them indefinitely in Guantanamo Bay without access to lawyers, utilizing secret evidence to detain them. Those are the kinds of egregious violations of due process and notions of judicial review and checks that justify the conclusion that these are political crimes against the Constitution itself.
And the greatest chance for peace comes from a society respectful of individual liberty.
Out there. Enemy of the state.
Subject entering on. We have reason to believe that
He was unsuspecting, was innocent.
Freeze there, times 10.
Producer of the He was unaware.
Past sensitive materials.
A film by Scott could kill him.
Request immediate keyhole visual tasking, maximum resolution.
Your way over. Now, what he doesn't know.
Lingerie for your wife.
Yes. I'm not really experienced in this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm experienced. I don't want to come in here and look stupid. Too late.
Think about it. When was
The last time I used it was before it went to the hotel where they were at.
Anything! Baby, look, you have something they want! 2 targets, rooftop.
You know how many federal agents you have following you?
You're doing, you don't know it!
You're a threat now.
Let's get into his life. We have you bugged it, Mr. Dean. Move to audio 3.
Find the wrong
Target's on the move.
Stay exactly where you are.
Every means possible to get what we need.
Target is on 21.
Director of
I don't know what you're talking about!
19.
About 15 minutes ago, bodies started dropping from the top floors of the tower closest to the highway.
18.
He jumped to 17.
About at least 5 or 6, and it was absolutely terrible. Obviously, they had two choices: to be burned in flames or to leap and end it all.
What is happening? You know me!
You're one of them, aren't you? Former conspirer.
I blew up the building!
Switch it, target, switch.
One of us died tonight. Somebody knows why. Somebody knows.
Man, this is our problem.
You live another day, I'll be very impressed.
It's not paranoia when they're really after you.
Tell them to stop it now! Because you made a phone call!
Pass sensitive materials to.
What do you suggest we do about it?
Send a heartbeat to the void that cries through you. The pale princess of a palace crack. And now the kingdom comes. The world is lost and blown. And we are flesh and blood, the sin hungry. In your darkest hour, no secrets lay. We can watch the world get found in its day.
God help us all.
That's why someone wants us out of the way. Why would I save a world I no longer have any stake in?
Gentlemen, welcome.
Adrian, we know everything.
Then what's there to discuss, Dan?
Plenty. You killed
You rest in peace. Figured it out first. Nixon had him keeping tabs on us, making sure we weren't rocking the boat. Found out what I was doing here. Even I couldn't predict he'd be the one to have a change of heart. I had to kill him. Then I neutralized. No easy task. I put roughly $2 billion into research to block down his vision of the future.
You used his psych profile to manipulate him. Got him to leave the planet.
I've known long enough to see he isn't devoid of emotion. His subtle facial twitches wouldn't be noticed by the layman, but to me, he might as well have been sobbing. All I needed to do was tug on the thread. The sudden flood of emotion felt when he came to believe he'd given people he loved was all the excuse he needed to leave Earth.
You're a bullshit assassin. You paid him to throw us off.
Gave his life in the service of a higher cause than you and your mass killer theory. One you followed with the tenacity of a true sociopath, and I was able to move forward.
Sorry to disappoint you.
We were supposed to make the world a better place.
Dan, that's exactly what I am doing.
Nuclear war, human extinction.
Of course, my moral safeguards gave me pause as a necessary sacrifice. A few key regions around the globe. New York, Los Angeles, Moscow, Hong Kong, disintegrated in an instant. 15 million people killed. South. The world's punishment for flirting with World War III. In fact, no one outside this room ever has to know.
The energy breakthrough I was working on just came to fruition.
Humanity's savage nature will inevitably lead to global annihilation.
So in order to save this planet, I had to trick it with the greatest practical joke in human history.
Killing millions.
To save billions. A necessary crime.
No, we can't let you do that.
Do that, Rorschach? I'm not a comic book villain. Do you seriously think I'd explain my masterstroke to you if there were even the slightest possibility you could affect the outcome? I triggered it 35 minutes ago.
Keep your own secrets. Don't even think about it. Never compromise. Not even in the face of Armageddon. That's always been the difference between us two.
I've made myself feel every day. See every innocent face I've murdered to save humanity. You understand, don't you?
Without condoning or condemning. I understand. Out of my way. People have to be told. You know I can't let you do that. Suddenly you discover humanity. Convenient. If you'd cared from the start, none of this would have happened. I can change almost anything. But I can't change human nature. Of course you must protect life's new utopia. What's one more body amongst foundations? What are you waiting for? Do it.